folks, and a warm welcome to the TC Music Show, a music magazine show especially for the classical world and other genres. We air every Friday from 5 to 9 p.m., and we will include a whole host of topics, some humour, some serious chat, some interviews, news and reviews of products, hot topics, can of worms, and music, of course. So please don't miss it every week on YouTube. And remember, please, to like, subscribe, and leave your comments. They're very important. Okay, let's get on with the show. Hello, folks, and welcome to the TC Music Show. This is the special recording studio edition. Now we're going to be looking at home recording setups versus going into a studio, paying your money for studio time and getting a really professional job. Although having said that, a lot of home recording equipment now, I don't say it can compete with big professional studios, but it can give the musician on a tight budget quite a reasonably decent radio-ready demo, okay, and maybe more. But first of all, let's start with some music news. Unfortunately, we have some obituary news from the classical realm. Christopher Gunning, who died May the 10th, he was a widely acclaimed English composer and conductor, and he was known both for his film and television work. He did lots of TV themes, intros, and series. One of the series that I absolutely adored was the television version of Hercule Poirot, so Mr. Poirot, and he had a great theme tune. Really got me going when I heard that theme tune. R.I.P. Christopher, you'll be sadly missed.
Oh my god.
And now it's time to spill the beans. And now some more news about the savage funding cut proposals in classical music, opera, local choirs, and the like from BBC and the English Arts Council. Now, nobody likes to work for nothing, and musicians are no different. Imagine David Bowie, the Rolling Stones, or Peter Gabriel, or prog bands like Yes being told to cut their cloth accordingly. I think you know what their response would be. Well, within the classical music world, Armageddon is approaching and indeed is now at the gates. At the time of this show, the debate is still raging on within the fortress of classical music as assault after assault on its structure threatens not only severely to weaken it, but bring the whole thing tumbling down. And within its bulwarks, it houses opera, choral music, medieval and baroque styles, etc. And all of these are affected by swinging, savage cuts to funding by, of course, of all institutions, the BBC and the Arts Council of England and other attacking bodies. In a concert reminiscent of Joseph Haydn's final farewell rest for his overworked and exhausted musos, whereby each orchestra member extinguished their candle and slunk quietly away, the new Edinburgh Festival director, famed Scottish violinist Nicola Benedetti, and Sir Simon Rattle plan a similar response in their concert as a kind of visual hit back at the funding cuts. Indeed, Sir Simon is planning to rattle some cages, no pun intended, and he stated that the intention to stop funding is tantamount to, quote, cultural suicide. Director Benedetti, who funds her own foundations for music teachers and children said audiences were dwindling and she has to fight the good fight in order to let the public see the value of music with, as she puts it, a strong backbeat. And that's a quote normally reserved for pop and soul music. Now, regarding this issue, it may very well be, as Doris Day sang, a case of que sera, sera. What will be, indeed will be. However, if classical music loses its funding or has a diminished budget, surely the giant conglomerate music corporations could stop funding drivel and pop and divert it into quality music written by the masters of old and performed by some of the very best musicians around today. That would seem like common sense, but then when did common sense ever come into it? So we can only watch from the wings and see the direction that this debate takes. And hopefully, the BBC and arts institutions will see sense and realise the value in music, because if not, we'll end up with AI and recorded music and nothing that we can see live. Okay, that's my tuppence worth, and now back to the show. If you're a home recording enthusiast for recording your music or podcasts or whatever it may be, there are a ton of magazines out there to help you with features, articles, and experts in home recording, such as Mr. Warren Hewitt, who's on YouTube with his weekly program called Produce Like a Pro. However, it is very fiddly. There's a big learning curve, and I know this myself. And you can't beat getting a proper recording engineer if you really want top quality recordings and saving you the hassle. So, what you need to do is book some time into a recording studio and get your stuff done there. And that's where my next guest comes in. My guest this week on the Zoom chat is a man who has his fingers in so many musical pies, I just can't keep count. This guy is a DJ, he is a studio engineer, a professional. He owns his own recording studio in Glasgow, the HQ Studios, and he's recorded all kinds of musicians from pop to rock to classical ensembles, theatre, musicals, including my own musical Queen of the Street, and he has also toured all over the world with various different bands. His name is Gregor James McPhie, and he's here tonight in this Zoom chat. So sit back now and enjoy. Here. Hello, Gregor, and how are we?
Very well, TC. How are things with you on the world?
Oh, just peachy plum, peachy plum. Now, for anybody that's watching, I might just say this man is an incredible musician. He has more fingers in more musical pies than I could keep track of. He is a total music entrepreneur. He is a drummer. He plays bass. He plays amazing guitar. He sings. He does hot knife. He does electronic dance music and DJ, and he plays in loads and loads of different groups and bands. Plus, guys, he owns his own recording studio known as the HQ Studios in Glasgow. So, Gregor, it's a pleasure to speak to you today, and thanks for coming on to this show.
No problem at all. Always a pleasure to speak to yourself, TC.
Okay, now, Gregor, I'd like to fire a few questions at you about your music life. Now, I know you've done incredible things because we've worked together in the past on the musical. And I may say, folks, Gregor, when I was doing a stage musical that I had written, Gregor did quite a few of the character parts, as well as engineering the whole 24 or 26 full-blown songs.
Oh, wonderful tracks as well. You're absolutely wrong, my dear. I can remember it well, yeah. I played a few, I get everything from a street urchin to an old posh Victorian type. Yeah. That was great, pal. That was great, Jesse. I really enjoyed doing that.
Well, I thought he did a grand job, not only in the recording, but in playing the parts of the characters for the musical. So that was fab. Now, Gregor, tell the viewers, please, how did you actually get into the studio side of things?
Right, well, I've been a session guitarist and bass player for a number of years. I was at college studying music, and it's that old adage that not so much what you learn at music college, it's people you meet. And that was very much the case, because I met a producer, a guy who was part of an old school rave band called the Rhythmic State, who still do quite a lot in the country, are very well respected. But at the time, in the early 90s, mid 90s, they were huge in Scotland. But this was around the late 90s when I went to college, when things were winding down for them. And I started working with a guy called Nick Williams, who was a producer. And by hanging around his studio all the time, I really got a taste for production as well. And it's just something I always really fancied myself doing. So yeah, within a few years, I had my own studio mentored by himself. And then from there, just build and build and build. Initially, I was a guitar teacher, and the studio was just in the corner of the room. And before I knew it, the studio was what was paying the bills, because I've always been a professional musician, a gigging musician, but the actual studio side of things now is more what I do than even performing as a musician.
Mm-hmm. So how many years has the studio been on the go?
Well, I actually, as a professional business, the HQ Glasgow has been around since 2010. But myself, actually, when I look back, I talk about, the production I started at college when I was about 17. But even going back to when I found this out recently, when I was 6 years old, I had a Amstrad MIDI hi-fi unit that had a 4-track on it, and I was messing with it even then. And then I had things like your Tascam Porta Studios and whatnot when I was 12. So I've always had a very keen interest in it. It was only really when I properly got into digital recording, when that became a thing, when you could actually record audio into a computer, when I really started taking it seriously. But I've always had an interest in recording. Mm-hmm. So, but like I said, professionally since 2010.
So do you think then the audio engineering is something that came kind of natural? Because I've been in studios over the years with the various bands I've played, and I've always enjoyed the playing stuff. But I must admit, standing at a huge desk with all these sliders and knobs and stuff, it's like bloody NASA for me. It's just, whoa, man. So how did you get your head around these huge mixing desks and stuff?
Yeah, I hear a lot of people saying that, TC. They say to me, oh, I need to be more interested. I should be more interested. To be honest, if you're not interested in it, get someone else to do it. I mean, I'm one of those kind of geeky people that start salivating in the mouth when I see all these big recording consoles. And, I will actually read the manual. So that's where I probably, I'm different from other people. And I think, if it's something that's going to take up a lot of your time doing something you don't want to do, the music process becomes, it's not going to be enjoyable for you. But, come with someone like me who really enjoys that side of the process. And that's why I get into it, because I'm really passionate about it. And I just have a genuine interest in how all these things work. So someone specifically, I know a lot of guitar players, incredible guitar players, for instance, way, way better than myself. But they're not interested in, recording music. So they'll come into me and I'll do the recording side for them, because I'm interested in that side of it, So I think you have to have an interest in it. Obviously we all want the product at the end, but not everyone's really interested in the process.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, I mean, I'm interested in the process of getting in the studio, being well practiced, doing your thing, getting the tracks down. It's just the whole... Remember, I was a drummer, and it's the old gag. What do you call a person that hangs about with musicians? Answer, a drummer. So for me, it was like, whoa, Einsteinian physics or something. watching the whole
Yeah.
process. It was just too much for my tiny brain as far as that goes. Now,
A lot of people,
carry on, please.
Okay, Jason. Sorry, I know a lot of people start off with that, but they wander into the control room, and then they think, well, this is interesting. I like it. And I hear that story from a lot of big producers that say they were in a band, but suddenly the control room interested them that bit more, and they had a kind of aptitude for that reason, you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Let's just skip for a wee minute back in time now. You had a very, very well-known jock rock band, as it was known. That was the Red Hot Chili Pipers. And you actually, was it platinum record you had, silver records with the band? I mean, you had quite a bit of success with that band, and you were one of the founders, were you not?
Well, I wasn't the founder. I was the sixth member, if you like. They were a wee kind of pipe band until I joined with the kind of rock thing, creating that kind of fusion, you know. See, I wasn't, like I said, I was the first guitar player. I kind of laid down the blueprint, if you like, you know, for another 300 people to copy, because I've got about 20 bands on the go at the same time these days, you know. So, yeah.
So it's become a franchise kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I hear every man, woman, and child tell me, oh, I know such and such that played with them, and I don't even know who they are. I mean, I heard the story about the original piper on the band, Stuart, getting on a bus with a bunch of people saying, who are you? And they said, we're the Red Hot Chili Pipers. He says, I'm the Red Hot Chili Pipers. Never having met each other, you know. So I just thought a big money-making thing.
Mm-hmm. But you enjoyed it at the time, though, did you not?
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, it was always a wee bit like an extended school holiday, if you know what I mean. You were kind of enjoying yourself, but you had to kind of watch what you're doing as well. It was always a real hotbed of politics. They were always suing each other on all these ridiculous things. So that side of it never interested me. They're not people I missed at all. You know, I went on to form my own band, Bags of Rock. And the whole ethos behind that was to try, you know, basically take the kind of idea of bagpipes and rock, but playing original material. And also just as far as a kind of political, I mean, all bands are political. More than two people in a band, you can politics. But the idea was to make it as fair as possible and just have an understanding and a very transparent organisation of things, you know. I mean, it still kind of ultimately didn't work out, but at the same time, I'm much happier the way that was run. It was run a lot more like a band should be, as opposed to, you know, everyone wondering who's taking the money, etc., and everyone lying to each other and all that sort of stuff, you know. So that side of it doesn't bother. I mean, it's not a period of my life look back and go, that was amazing, you know. I've never ever sat and listened to any of those records or ever really looked back with a great deal of fondness in that period, just because it was just such a hotbed of politics, you know. But ever since then, my musical life, whereas not as successful, has been far, far more enjoyable, you know, and much truer to what I wanted at music in the first place, which was to play good music and enjoy doing so.
Okay. Tell me now about Hot Knife. How did that come about? And what is it? Tell the viewers.
Well, Hot Knife is like a disco house, I would say. That's probably the main style. Yeah, disco, basically a dance music production where myself playing guitar and bass. What I wanted to do, I mean, I'm very influenced by a lot of disco, in particular things like Nile Rodgers. Always been a huge fan of him. And that style of, you know, disco, I really like that kind of guitar as a rhythm instrument, and the bass as well, basically creating a sound that people can dance to. You know, I think there's a few bands that have really nailed it over the years. Obviously, bands like Chic, a lot of other disco bands, even into the 80s, bands like NXS and things like that as well. It really created a sound, almost like a guitar-driven sound, but for the dance floor, you know. So that's what I was doing with Hot Knife. So a lot of although it's dance music production, it's got all those organic elements in it to really keep the whole thing, like I said, to keep it in some ways organic, although it's still effectively sequence beats that I'm using. So they're going to bridge both areas, if you like.
Now, you, in your music life, you must have met a whole bunch of different type of people who, if any, had a kind of lasting impression on you for the right reason.
I mean, if I'm dropping names, dare I say, one of the biggest people I ever met is Paul McCartney. Yeah, I mean, to play to Paul McCartney, it was effectively a corporate function. I was playing an old band of mine, and he was there and spoke to him after, and that's just ridiculous, you know. He's the Beethoven of our times, you know. But as far as people actually sat down and really got on well with and had a real chat with, Eric Bell from Thin Lizzy, he was a real great guy. Fun enough, we shared a bottle of whiskey that night, and he just sat and told me all these stories. And he was telling me the story how he wrote the Whiskey in the Jar solo. Whiskey in the Jar solo is my favourite guitar solo of all time, you know. And at one point he just stopped and said, I hope I'm not boring you with this. And I was like, mate, I used to buy guitar magazines to read this kind of stuff, and here I'm hearing it from the horse's mouth. Kept talking about Philip. And I'm just thinking, he's pal Philip. No, wait, no, you're talking about Phil Lynott, you know, and all these sort of stories, like I say, from the horse's mouth. But he's just a really, really good guy, and I really felt I had a connection with him on a human level, you know. So he left a big impression. He was an incredibly humble guy, and obviously a very, very important person in the grand scheme of things, you know.
Mm-hmm. I think it's always nice to meet people like that, and you do hear stories of people meeting, you know, big musicians. Sometimes it's positive, other times it's not so positive. I was lucky. One of the bands, it was a cabaret act I was playing with up in Aberdeen, and who dropped in after hours was a Big Country, and it was the bass player, the drummer, and the guitar players at Stuart Watson. Now the bass player and Stuart Watson sat up the back. Stuart Adamson
would it be?
No, he went home to Dundee. Is it Dundee or was it Dunfermline? He always goes home after the gig, so he wasn't there, but lead bass drums were there, and the drummer was a guy called Mark Brzezinski, or Brzezinski, like in a Polish name, and we sat chewing the fat till about 7 a.m, till my eyelids were just about ready to drop off, and then we went to bed. But that was great meeting him, because that was the first time I'd had a chat with, you know, a big guy. And there was a magazine came in, I think it was the Sunday Supplement magazine, came to do a thing in the band, and a chick walked in, beautiful, wearing a fur coat, took it off, and she was absolutely naked underneath, and she dived in the pool, and it turned into a farce with the managers trying to fish her out the pool and get her out the building. She was in to see the band at the time, so that was my claim to fame.
Right. I thought you were going to say fur coats and no knickers, but yeah, no knickers.
She had nothing, absolutely not a stitch on. But I mean, she was absolutely beautiful looking. Must have been a model or something like that. But that was fun that time. Now, I'm going to skip ahead again, because we're going to get you back for future episodes as well. What's the next thing that you're working on that you're excited about?
Well, I mean, I'm probably living my life vicariously through other people these days in the studio. I mean, because I'm not really, with the Hot Knife thing, things were going well for a bit, you know, and I got signed and all that, and I've had a number of near misses, dare we say it, and I got to a point where I was just quite happy to work in the studio until my inspiration came along. But someone I'm working with at the moment is really doing well, and I think I've never seen a buzz like this. And since I played with the Chili Pipers, I've never been party to a buzz like this. But a guy called Beluga Lagoon, not only is he a fantastic, he started at a customer studio, now he's one of my best mates. You know, a fantastic guy, but just a real creative powerhouse. Now, he had his own show on the BBC at one point. He's a videographer as well, in the kind of David Attenborough type style, and he makes wonderful things. I mean, that's his full-time job as a videographer. But he played supporting an act in the garage in Glasgow last Friday, and when I showed up, there was queues along the street, the whole block of people waiting to see him as a support act, and they were there for him. Is
that what that was? What you sent the video to Maureen? There was all these people lined up right around the block, and that was for him.
Yep.
Was it? Wow.
Well, every single person went in and knew every single word to his song. I mean, previously I played in like Loch Goylehead and Torridon. They're miles away with it. You know, I was on stage with him at that point. Also, I've done the sound for him as well. I'm his, producer effectively. I've done all his tracks to date. But in Torridon, I mean, they are sending nowhere. 6-hour drive from Glasgow. And 300 people, bought all the tickets overnight, and everyone showed up knowing every word to every song. I mean, that's quite a buzz, and he's really creating something that's, like I say, I'll be very, very surprised if that doesn't go stratospheric, because the buzz that is being created at the moment, it's just wonderful to see. The atmosphere was like a football crowd that was all on the one side, going mental, singing every lyric to every song. And really something, really phenomenal to be in the room at that time, because what a buzz, what a kind of, the spirits are lifted in the room when everyone's that happy. It's just a real electric atmosphere, that he creates just purely with a guitar and a vocal, or, with a few other members of the band. But his songs, they're going to be big.
Mm-hmm. So are you going to be working with him in the future then?
Always. He said he wouldn't work without me, which is a real compliment. I've done basically, it's what I call the virtual band service I do here in the studio. And what that is, people come in and they come in as a singer-songwriter, and I effectively add all the instrumentation behind that. In the case of himself, is adding the bass, drums, and bits of guitar, and all sorts of other things. He's very open to just creating different things. So he'll be doing tracks, and we'll be, instead of having a drum kit, we'll be slapping our legs or hitting the back of a guitar and creating all these weird, interesting loops and just doing stuff differently. He's got a kind of folky edge to what he does, but it's like neo-folk, I'd call it. He's really creating something new. And I'm honestly can work on things with him. I think, I've not heard a track like this before, and that excites me. That's what really interests me, something different,
Mm-hmm. So you've done the music thing, you've done rock, you've done jock rock, you've done musicals, you've done folk, you've done pop, you've done electronica, and you've also
done Oompa. Last week I done an Oompa track, done a reggae track, doing India, Oompa. I actually outsourced my guy.
Sorry, what's an Oompa?
Like a Salvation Army band type tune. I actually outsourced someone to play the horns on there.
Yeah, right. Wow.
So anything. It's all music at the end of the day.
Yeah. Tell me about your DJing. How did you get into the DJing, and what made you put the guitar away and go into that style for a DJ as a while?
Well, I do still I DJ all the time. I've always loved dance music, and I've always enjoyed, I kind of, going to a good DJ set as much as I enjoy going to a good gig, and I go to both of them all the time. Even like Saturday, I know I'm out tomorrow night, and I'm going to a gig first, and then I'm going to a DJ night, and I've always loved that. I just love music. Music as a whole, it's not any style or anything. I do have certain styles that I gravitate towards, but if you're immersed in a style of music, if you can actually appreciate a style of music in its natural habitat, dance music in a club, jazz music in a basement cellar, heavy metal at a gig, all these sort of things, then you'll understand better that style of music. And I've been immersed in music from all different styles, just professionally what I do in the studio, and it gives you an appreciation for it. Maybe it's not a musical talent, maybe it's a rhythmic talent, maybe it's a kind of a poetic talent and things like that. But I just love it as a whole. So you get experience of all these different styles, and you have an appreciation for them. I think to give yourself an interest in just one style of music can be very limiting to your. You can only consume so much of it, because after you get through all the good stuff, you're going to find the dross. But if you go in another style, you have the cream and the crop in every style when you listen.
Now, I've looked at some of these videos and magazine articles about being in the studio, home recording, or studio recording type thing, and they often talk about mic placement. Now, what I'd like to ask is, you talked about doing Oompa music, as you say, brass band music. Now, if you're doing guitars and bass and drums, you've done these for years, so you know exactly where you're going to get good results with the placement of the mics. Does it present a challenge when you're recording strings or orchestral or brass instruments? Is it a different setup?
Yeah, well, mic placement's very important. If you think of it back in the days when Elvis was recording, they had like two mics in the studio. You maybe had two tracks if they were lucky, or just the one track. The mic placement would be everything, and the actual sound of the room would be everything as well. So they would spend forever. I mean, all these old engineers, although they had very basic setups, they were much more attuned to what a good mic placement was than we are. But since people in the 60s, you had Joe Meek. Joe Meek was one of the first producers who actually, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yep. You know, and you know, he died in disgrace. A lot of his inputs to music recording have been forgotten about, but he was one of the first people to close mic instruments. And when you close mic something, you're not taking into account the sound of the room and whatnot. But when you close mic, you need to be aware of where the good place is to make a bagpipe. Classic example, a frequency nightmare. If you can work with bagpipes, you can work with anything, because knowing exactly the angle, and you know, it's a centimetre that way, centimetre up and down, you on the chanter to make it actually the perfect sound. It's really just using your ear. Always use your ear. Never look at, I mean, levels and things, yeah, important to an extent, but as long as you use your ear as your guide, and just close your eyes off. Closing the eyes, very important, because your eyes, you can hear with your eyes sometimes if you're not careful. So just closing your eyes and just listening with your ears and seeing exactly where the good mic placement is, yeah, it makes all the difference. But that's something you get to know the more you work with certain, you know, instrument and guitar speakers as well. As another example, very easy to get a bad sound from a guitar speaker if the mic's in the wrong place as well, you know. So, and when it's done, it's done. So yeah, taking time with these things and really getting to know the mic positions and the frequencies you need to cut out is all important for getting a good sound, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about orchestral people? Have you seen a few of them popping in the studio over the years?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's it. Getting the position good on it. I mean, what kind of mic do you use as well? Do you use a condenser? Do you use a 57, etc.? You know, but yeah, no, I've worked with a few string quartets. I've recorded string quartets live, and if it's something like an orchestra with loads of players, then it's just a few mics, and you got to just make sure that, you know, your mic's not too biased to one side or the other. You know, for instance, 4 string players move the mic back so that the actual mic is picking up all 4 strings, etc. But if it's just like a cello player or something, then yeah, somewhere around the bridge of the F hole, move it around there, and you get a specific sound that you're looking for, yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's these classical people, how are they to work with? Are they easy to work with, or are they quite nitpicky?
I'll be totally honest with you. I've got I've got a few numbers on my phone of people that I work with who are very easy to work with, because yeah, I hate to badmouth people, but certain folks, a lot of folks from the conservatoire, as it's called, you know, or the RSAMD as it used to be known, yeah, got a bad attitude in the studio, you know, and the rock and rollers are just, yeah, however many takes you want, blah, blah, blah. But I found sometimes, especially with my group of string players, to be very cliquey. You know, sometimes you say, can you do that again? So, well, we thought it was good. And then the subtext to that is that's me being nice, saying, I don't think it was good enough, do it again. But I'm saying, oh, could you do another take? I have to be diplomatic. So, string players, yeah, a wee bit of a law unto themselves at times, to be honest. But there's a lot of ones that I work with that are amazing. And I always have their number, and I get them work for that reason, because you need to be amiable in the studio. A session musician doesn't go in and tell you, I'll play it my way. Session musician goes in and says, you know, 3 bags full, sir, whatever you want, I'll do. That's the job, and that's the job I've had as a session player as well. You do whatever you're told, because, you know, they're ultimately paying you.
Well, that's true. He who pays the piper and all that.
Calls the tune, exactly.
I would imagine if you get somebody that's easy to work with, would be saying, well, look, here's what I'm going to try and achieve. Could you help me achieve this? And that's a good way to work.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's like, you know, even in the film world, I mean, I think, you know, Ewan McGregor, I mean, a lot of his films, I mean, I really like him as an actor, but some films I've seen him in, I thought, I don't know if that was the best, you know, casting there. But as a person, I've met him a few times, and you know, he's a really, really amiable, nice guy. He's a really good guy to work with, and you got to balance it up against the ability. Who do you want to work with? I would rather work with someone that's ability, they were good, and they were really easy to get on with, as opposed to someone that's great and a complete brutalist, or just someone that's very, very difficult to work with, you know, and very opinionated. So that's part of it as well. You know, you want to have people around that you'll make your life easy, and you know, at the end of the day, people aren't going to hear on the record how difficult someone is in real life. They'll hear the quality, you know, and sometimes you got to remind yourself of that working with certain people. But I would rather work with someone that was amiable and done the job right, as opposed to done a fantastic job and, you know, maybe wouldn't show up to the studio that day because they couldn't be bothered, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, our time is running low. The sands of time are almost gone. So, can I just say, before this thing cuts us off, as it does, can't we just knock it on the head and say, let's have you back maybe in 3 or 4 weeks' time again? And maybe next time we could talk about recording process, the equipment you're using, and what you're looking for from the recordings.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. TC, I need to go over and see you as well at some point, sir.
Well, you know, the door's always open, Gregor, especially for yourself. And we would love to have you, Maureen and I would love to have you over here, and you would love it. No more rain, no more dull grey days, just sand, and it's a wee beach town, so you would love it. You've got a beautiful seaside and sand, and lots of bars, restaurants and stuff.
Cheap beer. Good.
Well, it's good beer, that's the thing. And Spanish people are very laid back, you know, they're easy to get on with, so we'll look forward to.
I look forward to that.
Yeah. And I have a barrel, so I can wheel you up from the beach in a barrel.
You might have to. That sounds excellent. Great fun.
There's nothing I like better than actually sitting, looking out at the beach, looking at the sea, just having a wee bite, a pint of beer, and just reflecting. And, you know, with a long pin, just to prick myself and say, am I really here? You know, is this really me? And I think back to Scotland and I think, oh God, you know, it's light years away. So anyway, I digress. Once again, this is the man who is the owner of HQ Studios in Glasgow. So if you're ever looking for an excellent studio to record in and an excellent engineer who is very well versed in all styles of music, Gregor is your man. Okay, Gregor, once again, we'll speak soon and I'll get you back on Zoom. And once again, thanks very much for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you, TC, and all the best for your show.
Thank you. Bye. Well, folks, that's it for this week. Please tune in next Friday on YouTube between 5 and 9 p.m. for the TC Music Show. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next show.